In this edition of Impact, the ancient practice of food foraging finds a revival in modern times.
Foraging is basically getting in touch with nature and sourcing your own food. It's a lifestyle.
Then we visit a small community in Mexico where a devoted woman is working to make a difference.
I remember thinking, why are those people living on those hills in those conditions? Somebody should help them. But I never thought that person would be me.
But first, we follow the journey of a young sea lion who needs help recovering from an environmental problem.
The great thing about this animal is throughout this, she really had the personality of an animal that we knew was going to survive in the wild.
Welcome to Impact. I'm Grace Lim, this year's supervising producer. In our first segment, we visit the California coast, where an environmental problem has put sea lions in danger. We meet one sea lion, number 74, who just might have a fighting chance with the help of a rescue group.
California sea lions normally should be very alert, very robust, especially the pups and yearlings running around. The pups that we were seeing in the beginning of the year this year, they just, for lack of a better word, they just looked really sad.
What was really hard this year was to see how severely malnourished these pups were. These really were animals that were on the brink of death and starving to death.
It wasn't just limited to a couple of pups, it just every day brought in more and more pups.
What was amazing to see was how our team pulled together and rehabilitated these animals and really gave them that second chance at life. The first time we rescued number 74, she was the 74th sea lion we rescued since January 1st of 2013. When she initially stranded in March, she was actually one of the cases that came in during the unusual mortality event. She was 11.5 kilos.
Jen and I don't remember the last time the quarantine area was empty.
This is at least 15 to 20% under the body weight that she should be. She was pretty unresponsive, extremely lethargic, and her body was starting to shut down. She really was on the brink of death.
Number 74 is the California sea lion, a species that belongs to the group of animals known as pinnipeds. At the start of 2013, sea lion pups began stranding in mass quantities. By March, the National Marine Fisheries Service declared it an unusual mortality event, or UME.
This year's event really began in January when the rehabilitation facilities in Southern California specifically started seeing high rates of strandings of young of the year. So these are pups that in January were about 6 months old. These animals at that age should still be with their mothers, and they should be on the islands off the California coast. So to have them on the mainland and to have them stranding in January was kind of already a little unusual. And then it kept going.
Quick poke, there we go.
There's a time of year that we call our stranding season. It's when we know a lot of the animals are going to be weaned from their moms and they may become malnourished.
Baby nails.
On average, we rescue about 100 to 150 marine animals a year. We were preparing for that.
We used a small needle, we were kind.
It's okay. During the unusual mortality event, Santa Barbara, San Pedro, Laguna Beach, the facilities there starting getting hit with higher number of rescued animals than average, but at that time SeaWorld was not. So we offered our assistance to these facilities. After we did that, the UME had moved further south to the Mexican border, and that's when we started to get hit with a high number of animals, and we rescued over 400 young California sea lion pups.
Number 74 is one of the 400 patients at SeaWorld. However, her case was unlike any of the other sea lions. She fell victim to the UME not once, but twice.
We can do this either with vitamins or with antibiotics. If the animals have an infection and need treated, we just hide it in the gill of the fish, just like you would probably with your kids, and sugar, cough syrup. 24, get your head start, buddy.
She had been returned to the ocean in April, but her good health didn't last long. A month later, she was spotted, stranded on a nearby beach. This time, starvation wasn't her only problem. She now suffered from aggressive pneumonia.
So here's a radiograph of 74. She presented with difficulty breathing. And if you look at the screen, you can see that the darker area over here is air outside of the room. And that color is, that gray to black color is typical of what air shows up on an X-ray. And typically healthy lungs show up as fairly similar to the background air because lungs should be air-filled when they're normal and not diseased. But you can tell that this girl's lungs are filled with a dark white area, and that gave us a clue that she had a lot of bacteria and pus in her lungs.
We actually weren't sure if we were going to be able to treat this pneumonia and get her back to being healthy enough to survive in the wild on her own. Fortunately, we were. This is one of the initial areas we would put one of the most emaciated, lethargic, malnourished animals. This is one of our shallower pools. Most of these animals, when they came in, were severely dehydrated and extremely weak, and they had a hard time even pulling themselves out of this pool. So we can actually even put a cover over this pool or pen and keep it completely dry in case the animal is so emaciated and its condition is so guarded that we don't even want it to have access to water. Then as they start to progress through the system, start to eat on their own, start to gain weight, we'd move them into areas 2 and 3. Normally, during a normal stranding season, we'd probably see 15 animals back in this area between all 3 of these quarantine areas. During the unusual mortality event, at one time we had 50 animals just back in these 3 queues.
The high volume of sea lions became a major strain on the centers in Southern California. National Marine Fisheries Service opened another site to take in elephant seals from surrounding shelters, and the location was a bit unusual.
Yeah, we're in the mountains, so we are already a very well-established facility for all other animals, just excluding marine mammals. So, you know, kind of the logical next step, why don't we just start doing marine mammal rehabilitation as well? All right, so we are under some construction right now, so how it is configured in here is not at all how it looks when we actually have animals. This is our quarantine area. That is basically just to keep them separate from the other animals that we already have that are in the rehabilitation process.
But rescue and rehabilitation wasn't the center's only responsibility. Much of their work dealt with the pups that had died.
We were doing a lot of necropsy for them. We found a lot with abscesses. They were just large pockets of green and yellow pus all over their body, whether it's in their lungs, in their liver. It looked like they got sick systemically.
The investigation is still underway by National Marine Fisheries Service, but they're certain about one thing.
There was a lack of prey available to those pups. The reasons behind that lack of prey is what we're still working on, trying to figure out. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are fewer fish in the ocean. It just means that maybe they're not in the places that the sea lions can get to.
Despite the mass strandings this year, scientists aren't worried about the number of California sea lions. Today, there are approximately 300,000, and that number continues to grow. Investigators use these events to take a look at things that may often go unnoticed.
Unusual mortality events typically kind of highlight certain things that are actually occurring at a lower level all the time. One of the things that we did in this unusual mortality event was we put satellite tags on more pups than we typically do, and we can look at their tracks and, you know, see how well they're doing post-release.
Number 74 is one of SeaWorld's first and last patients from the UME, and today she will be released. For SeaWorld, her return to the wild marks the end of this event.
The great thing about this animal is throughout this, she really had the personality of an animal that we knew was going to survive in the wild. And that was really positive signs for us that we were going to be able to give this animal that second chance, or third, in her case.
Where we're going to return 74, we know we're setting her up for success. There's other sea lions around, and there's a lot of bait fish around. So she's got a great chance going out there.
The goal is to rescue these animals, rehabilitate them, and give them that second chance at life to return them to the wild. That's the happy ending, and we know now that animal can take care of itself, and it's going to do well, and it's going to survive out there, and there's another animal on that beach that's probably malnourished and needs our help.